Hi there. My name is Lucas Weiss, and I am the host of the Weesesports Quarantine Chronicles. For today's episode, I'm interviewing Elisabeth Rositsan. Elisabeth is a Lithuanian rhythmic gymnast who competed at the World Championships back in 2017, representing her country at Rhythmic Gymnastics. She's now a Ryerson University sports media student, using her skills in writing, broadcasting, radio, to pursue a career in sports media. In our conversation, Elisabeth and I touch on her career as a rhythmic gymnast, the process that allowed her to get into a mindset to compete at the World Championship level, as well as we dive into some of her work as a sports media student at Ryerson, including a piece on Jerry Howarth, the longtime Blue Jays radio voice for the Canadian Baseball Network. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Elisabeth, and if you are a fan of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is episode 3 of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles. Elisabeth and I are colleagues at the Canadian Baseball Network. We'll get into some of her writing later on in the show. But Elisabeth, I want to start with you because, as I said off the top, you were in rhythmic gymnastics. And I just want to maybe start off by asking you how you got involved in the sport.
Yeah, well, I've been involved in rhythmic gymnastics ever since I can remember. Like, I was first introduced to the sport when I was 6. It was my parents who kind of took me to the rhythmic gymnastics, like, club for kids. And at first I really didn't like it, to be completely honest. I thought it was really hard and I didn't like the stretching and everything. But later on I kind of tried different sports like tennis, figure skating, and nothing really stuck with me. So I came back to rhythmic gymnastics at about the age of 8 or 9, and then I saw the older girls practicing their routines and I just really fell in love with the sport. I realized how beautiful it was and how just amazing of a sport it is. So yeah, I've kind of been involved with the sport since I was 6.
Wow. Definitely quite a long time. And you mentioned that you first didn't like the sport. What were some of the factors that got you to fall in love with it?
Yeah, well, it's a really hard sport. I would say every sport is hard, but it's mentally really hard and physically, of course. You have to stretch a lot, you have to do cardio, you have to do strength. There's all these things you have to do. Plus, when you're performing, you're alone. It's not like a team sport. All the attention is on you, so it's a really mentally hard sport. So at first I found that very intimidating and I just found it too hard, and like I kind of didn't like it. But then the something that really made me fall in love with the sport was seeing the older girls who were already progressed in the sport practicing their routines, and I saw how beautiful it was and how much work and passion they were putting into it. And that's when I realized, wow, like I want to be just like them. I want to do that. And that's when I started working really hard towards my goals.
Did any of the older girls that you worked with and you saw mentor you, particularly on the mental side of the sport?
On the mental side, I would say my coach mentored me the most, because it is a very competitive sport. And I feel, of course, I had friends in the gym, and I had most of my best friends are from gymnastics, but I don't know, it's really hard to look for mental support from your kind of opponents, or as you said, from older girls, because everyone's really focused on what they're doing and on their own performance. So it's really hard. They, of course, the older girls help me out, and whenever I would ask a question, they would be very helpful. But the person who helped me the most mentally, especially, was my coach. She knew exactly what to say to me and when to say it. She had the right words at the right time. So yeah, my coach is a big part of, my mental strength during my performances.
You mentioned how rhythmic gymnastics is beautiful. And for anyone who watches gymnastics, I know I do often at the Olympics, and it is a beautiful sport. But unlike
Mhm.
basketball or baseball, where, those are 82 game seasons, 162 game seasons, rhythmic gymnastics, you are preparing for that one moment, and you're practicing all these acrobatic moves and doing those routines. So it's a real pressure cooker sport. How are you able to
Mhm.
relish in the pressure-filled moments in your rhythmic gymnastics career?
Well, there are a lot of factors that go into it. You practice for hours and hours every day for that, as you said, for that little a minute 30, literally. And you have to really be mentally prepared for that. And I would say, especially during the period when you're performing, it's all mental because your body knows what it's doing. You practice the routines millions of times, so it's all at that moment, it's all mental. You really have to. For me, I had like a routine that I would follow on days of when I had competitions. So I would eat the same meal every competition day. Have I would sleep with my teddy bear. I would talk to my hoop or ball. I would do the exact same thing every single competition day. And I think that really helped me, get into the rhythm of competition and help me mentally as well. And as I mentioned before, my coach, when I would have moments of doubt and when I would, kind of start freaking out before a competition, she knew exactly what to do, what to say, how to calm me down. So my coach was a big part of that.
Sounds like someone's pretty superstitious with the teddy bear, talking to the
Very.
ball.
Yeah, I now not so much, but when I was still competing, I was extremely superstitious. And yeah, I had to have the exact same color towel. I always had a green dot towel to dry my hands. I had just little superstitions that I would always follow.
And for those of you who may be watching this and not know about rhythmic gymnastics, what goes into picking the song behind your routine? I watched some of the footage that you did when you competed at the World Championships, and I feel like the song is such a big part of whether the overall routine is going to work or not.
For sure, music is a really huge part of rhythmic gymnastics, as you said, and it's a really passionate sport and it's a very emotional sport. And I feel you get judged on artistry, but also you have to make it seem like you're loving what you're doing. And you just have to love every routine that you have. And if you don't, then judges are going to see that you don't like what you're doing and the fans are going to see that you don't like what you're doing. So the music is very important, and how we pick it out is I usually picked it out, cut a a song together, or found, rhythmic gymnastics music on YouTube, and then I showed it to my coach, and my coach would have to either approve or disapprove or say, oh, change this part, cut this differently, because coach knows best. But
Mm.
I like to pick my own music because I was a very emotional gymnast, I would say, and picking the music and creating the routine was a big part of why I love the sport so much. So that was very important for me. But some girls want their coach to pick the music for them. They don't want the pressure of picking the right song, so they just ask the coach to do it for them. So it's everyone's personal preference, really.
That's interesting that you say you picking the music and just be, someone who's an emotional gymnast, because not only is it getting the moves correctly, it's also the show that you put on. Like when I watch gymnastics or rhythmic gymnastics, the ones that really stand out to me are the routines where the gymnast is really showing a lot of emotion, that it's a real story behind the piece rather than just doing the moves for the sake of doing the moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. It's so different when you see a gymnast just robotically complete the set of moves that she's supposed to, and when you see a gymnast actually loving what she's doing and, passionately performing her routine, and I think that's emotion is really important. And like rhythmic gymnastics, artistic gymnastics, figure skating, I think those sports require you to show emotion when you're performing, because otherwise, it's not entertaining. It's not fun to watch a gymnast who's robotic and emotionless. So emotion is for sure a huge part of the sport.
As I said earlier, Elisabeth, you made the 2017 World Championships. I'm curious what that moment was like for you to be able to represent your country of Lithuania on the world stage doing the sport that you love.
It was a very, very emotional moment, and I had mixed emotions, to be honest, throughout that World Championships, because I had a really severe foot injury. So I was dealing with that as well, so I had the choice to compete or not to compete, and I chose to compete. And I had to deal with foot pain, but at the end, when I actually walked out on the big stage and performed in the World Championships in front of all those people, it was all worth it, and I just couldn't believe I was there. It was such a surreal moment, and such like a dream come true basically for me, because I couldn't believe that I'm there, and it was just surreal, but it was also really, really hard, and it took a lot of emotional strength, I would say.
What made it so difficult in addition to the foot injury?
Um, well, again, I didn't want to, for me, a big part was I knew like deep down that will probably be my last World Championships, because the year after I'd probably be away in university. So it was really important for me to perform well so I could be calm and be happy with myself and know that I've done everything that I could in my gymnastics career. So that was very mentally hard for me, because I knew if I didn't perform well, I would never be able to live it down. And I also didn't want to disappoint my coach, disappoint my parents, the people who were watching. I really wanted to perform to the best of my ability. So the mental aspect, again, was very challenging, just coping with the fact that it's now or never, because I might never get another chance. That was really hard to, cope with.
People don't recognize, people not in athletics recognize the sacrifices that not only the athlete makes to compete in their sport, but also their coach and the family. For you, Elisabeth, can you just describe the integral relationship that you had with your parents and your coach, and some of the sacrifices they may have made to enable you to compete on the world stage in rhythmic gymnastics?
I feel that I'm very lucky to have extremely supportive parents, and my parents are really amazing, and they've always supported me and, provided me and continue to provide me with a lot of care and love and support throughout everything I do. And it was very mentally hard for my parents when I would lose and get upset, because they knew gymnastics meant the world to me. So they would kind of live throughout the emotions together with me. So, no one wants to see their child upset or, injured. So that, just them seeing me injured or upset, it was hard for them. But they supported me through everything, and even little things like I wouldn't have time to eat between trainings or school, and she would bring me lunch or something like that. And those little things, they mean so much. And, that support, I feel extremely grateful that I had that support. And without my parents, I wouldn't have accomplished anything really. And my coach as well, she was quite strict, and sometimes I got a bit tired of it, and I thought, oh, why is she yelling at me, or why is she telling me to do this? But it was all from a good perspective and a good heart, and she just wanted the best for me. And once I got older, I really realized that she's making a lot of sacrifices for me. So yeah, my parents and my coach were my biggest supporters, I would say, and without them, I wouldn't have accomplished anything really, I don't think.
You mentioned how your parents and your coach were there for you when you experienced failure in the sport. And I can't imagine what that must be like, particularly for, we talked about, such a pressure cooker sport. You're preparing for that 1 minute and 30 seconds to do your routine. But what did you learn from that failure that enabled you to have success in not just the sport, but in other parts of life?
Well, when I was younger, I was actually, I wasn't like a good gymnast right off the bat. I was one of the worst in my group when I just started gymnastics, and I had a lot of failure when I just started, and there were a lot of moments when I thought, well, when I got last place, or, I was at the end of the rankings, and I thought, well, why am I doing this, and I had a lot of moments of doubt, and I wanted to quit a lot of the times. But, as I mentioned before, the support from my coach and my parents really allowed me to kind of overcome those failures and really learn from them. So, and I was also a very sore loser, which is not a good thing, but I absolutely, losing was like the end of the world for me. And I thought, that's it, the world has ended. I can't do anything else. But, the mental support from my coach and my parents really helped me get through those moments. And the moments of failure and the moments of loss really, I would say, taught me a lot, even more than the moments when I had won, because now in life I feel like I'm stronger and that I'm more prepared for, for what lies ahead for me. And I learned so much life lessons from gymnastics and from losing that it's easier for me now to cope with certain things.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what lies ahead for you. As I said off the top, you're currently attending Ryerson University Sports Media program. And I'm curious how your experience as a rhythmic gymnast helped influence your decision to get involved and pursue a career in sports media.
To be honest with you, it wasn't a straightforward decision at all. I didn't really think about what I wanted to do in the future until I was like in grade 10 maybe of high school. And then my mom asked me, well, you're graduating high school in like 2.5 years, what are you gonna do? And then it kind of clicked, well, what am I gonna do, because gymnastics was the only thing I knew how to do, and the only thing I was good at, and the only thing that I liked doing. So at first I thought I would be a coach, because that would be, most gymnasts pursue coaching. But then I thought, I want to try myself in something else in life, and I want to see if I could do something else with my knowledge of sports. And I didn't just, obviously rhythmic gymnastics was my main sport, but I liked a lot of other sports. I followed basketball, I followed soccer, I followed tennis. I was just a huge sports fan growing up. So then I kind of started researching, programs related with sport, because sport was really the only thing I was interested in and the only thing I liked doing. So I really started researching a lot what university programs had to offer, and then I kind of accidentally actually stumbled upon sport media at Ryerson, and I read more about the program, and I thought, this is perfect for me, this is what I want to do. Like, the more I researched the program, the more I thought, this is what I want to do. So then I kind of applied for it, and I was lucky enough to get in.
Well, it's a very competitive program, and
Yeah.
from what I've been seeing, what you've been doing, and for anyone that follows you on Twitter, you write, you broadcast, you do on-air clips, you do video production. One video that I was really interested in that you created was about gymnastics, and particularly about that failure and heartbreak that some of the athletes experience. What was it like making that piece? And I guess your experience as a gymnast really helped shape what that video piece was going to look like.
For sure, that piece was something that really came from the heart for me, because, well, the most of the content that I do or that I produce for school or that I write about isn't about rhythmic gymnastics. It's about baseball, basketball, the major sports. Like, I wrote some things about figure skating, but it's almost never about gymnastics because gymnastics just isn't popular in Canada. So I wanted to make something that really showed people what the sport actually is. So, and I love editing and, producing content. So I figured, why not just do a little montage of what the sport means. So that was a piece that I didn't do for school or for any, website. It was just something that I did to show people what the sport is. So that was a very emotional piece for me to make, and but I'm happy the way it turned out.
Well, I could tell it was really well done. Speaking of baseball, of course, I mentioned off the top that you and I are colleagues at the Canadian Baseball Network. And at the end of last year, you wrote a piece on longtime Blue Jays broadcaster Jerry Howard. And I really loved your lead to this piece. It starts, after listening to perfectly flowing words pieced together throughout Blue Jays broadcasts, it is hard to believe that it wasn't always this easy for Jerry Howard. And I think that lead just captures not only the reader's attention, but we want to know more about Jerry. And I think for a lot of Blue Jays supporters and followers, we've heard Jerry so much, call so many classic games. But when you did this story, what did you learn about Jerry that not many people really know about?
Well, I've kind of analyzed his whole life leading up to, his obviously huge success with the Blue Jays. And he had a really inspirational past, I would say. He worked some other jobs, not related to broadcasting, and, he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do, and then kind of realized he loves sports, he loves broadcasting. And the most interesting and kind of inspirational thing that I've learned from, interviewing him and writing that piece was that he would take it upon himself he had a recorder, and he would go record to all university, all college games and record himself talking, doing play-by-play to those games. And then he would listen back to those recordings and correct every single day what he did wrong, what he could improve. And he did that all from his own initiative, and I think that's just so inspirational because he put hours and hours of work into that, and that made him so great. He was obviously one of the most amazing broadcasters. So I think because he put in that much work when he was younger, that really reflects in his work when he was already a professional. So that was a really interesting thing. And he's just a very humble human, I would say, and he's really humble about his work, and I just really admire that because he's just such a nice person, and he always says, it's not about me, it's about the people who are listening. So I found that extremely, extremely inspirational as well.
Well, two things from that. I think one, being nice. It gets you
Yeah.
so far in this industry. I mean, it sounds cliche, but just treating people with respect and in a kind way can get you so far, because in an industry that's so challenging to navigate and not as many jobs, the fact that you're a good person that can work hard and treat others well can make you so much more hireable. And then I think secondly, the whole criticizing your broadcasts, that's a really interesting thing too, because I know for me, I know I'm not always liking to listen to my own voice calling broadcasting games, but it's so important if you want to get better and progress through your broadcasting career.
Yeah, I completely agree. As you say, it sounds cliche, but hard work and having a humble attitude and being nice to people is what's going to get you far, because it's all about the biggest people who are successful. That's what they've been doing, so that's really important. And as you said, criticism is also very important, because I think you should be able to take criticism and use that to your advantage and improve your work, and also be able to criticize your own work, because there's never perfection. There's always something you can improve. So I think it's really important to criticize your own work.
And finally, Elisabeth, obviously this is such a challenging time, not, COVID-19 pandemic, as well as a changing media landscape as a result of that. Based on your experience doing all of the skills in the sports media toolbox, writing, producing, broadcasting, how important is it for you to have all these skills, particularly as you're going forward in your young career as a sports journalist?
Well, it's extremely important to have different skills, even if you want to be just on air, you still have to learn how to do other things. You still have to learn how to edit, how to write, how to direct, because you never know what you might end up doing. And I think it's really important to have a wide skill set so that you can utilize that. And people, employers are more likely to hire you if you have a wider skill set. So, as hard as these times are right now, and as, uncertain they are, this is a really great opportunity for me and for you and for other young people in the sport media industry to really improve on all these different skills and do a lot of different projects, because, we have the time now and we can really utilize the technology we have to improve our skills. So I think it's extremely important to have a wide skill set in this industry.
Elisabeth Rositsan, thank you so much for joining the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles. She was a member of the Lithuania Rhythmic gymnastics team. She competed at the World Championships in 2017, now pursuing sports media at Ryerson University. Definitely check her out on Twitter for all her writing, broadcasting, and producing. Elisabeth, thank you so much for joining episode 3 of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a really great talk, and I wish you luck in all your work you do going forward.